Something absolutely historic just went down in Cincinnati. And what happened in the hours that followed has the entire NFL world sitting in complete disbelief. Myles Garrett didn't just break the most untouchable record in professional football. He shattered it. He obliterated it. He took a number that stood for over 2 decades and made it his own. And he did it alongside a rookie quarterback that nobody believed in. A 5th-round pick out of Colorado who spent the first half of the season buried on the depth chart. A kid who was written off before he ever got his chance to prove what he could do. Together, they delivered one of the most iconic moments in Cleveland Browns history. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. Less than 24 hours after the confetti fell and the record books were rewritten, the Cleveland Browns organization dropped a nuclear bomb on their own franchise. The head coach who built that elite defense, gone. The quarterback situation, exploding into complete chaos. And the most dominant defensive player in professional football just drew a line in the sand that ownership cannot afford to ignore. This isn't just about a sack record. This is about power. This is about loyalty. This is about a franchise tearing itself apart from the inside while 2 players desperately try to hold it together. What you're about to hear goes far deeper than anything the mainstream media is reporting. The backroom decisions that led to this moment. The ultimatums being issued behind closed doors. The alliances forming between players who refuse to let this organization destroy what they've built. The Cleveland Browns are standing at the edge of a cliff. One wrong step and everything crumbles. One right move and something special could emerge from the wreckage. The next decision this franchise makes will determine the next decade of football in Cleveland. And the 2 men at the center of it all are watching, waiting, and refusing to back down. This is the story nobody else is telling you. And by the time you hear all of it, everything you thought you knew about the Browns' future will change completely. The air in Cincinnati carried that bitter January cold that cuts right through you. Packer Stadium was packed to capacity. Division rivals going to war one final time before the offseason swallowed everything whole. The energy inside that building was absolutely electric, but everyone in attendance knew what was really at stake on that field. Myles Garrett entered the game with 22 sacks on the season. He was tied with the legendary marks set by Michael Strahan back in 2001 and matched by TJ Watt in 2021. One more sack would give him sole possession of the most prestigious individual record a defensive player can hold. The Bengals knew it was coming. Their offensive line had spent the entire week game planning for this exact scenario. Joe Burrow knew it was coming. He'd been sacked by Garrett enough times over the years to understand what was barreling toward him. Every single person in that stadium knew exactly what Garrett was hunting for. And still, nobody could stop him. Fourth quarter was winding down, 4 minutes left on the clock. The Browns clung to a slim lead, but the game was far from over. Cincinnati had the ball, threatening to drive down the field and steal the victory right out from under Cleveland's feet. 3rd down. The Bengals needed a conversion to keep the drive alive. Burrow took the snap and dropped back into the pocket. His eyes scanned the field, looking for an open receiver. The protection was solid for about half a second. Then Myles Garrett happened. He exploded off the edge like a freight train with a personal vendetta. The left tackle tried to mirror his movements, tried to cut off his angle, tried to do anything to slow him down. It didn't matter. Garrett bent the corner with a speed and violence that defied physics. He accelerated through contact, his hand slapping the tackle's chest plate aside like it was made of paper. Burrow never had a chance. Garrett wrapped him up and drove him into the turf before the ball ever left his hands. The referee's whistle blew. The crowd erupted. Teammates sprinted toward Garrett from every direction. Sack number 23? The record that had stood for over 2 decades was officially broken. Michael Strahan's mark was surpassed. TJ Watt's matching total was eclipsed. Myles Garrett now owned the single-season sack record outright. No asterisks, no debates, no controversial plays or questionable calls. Just pure, undeniable, violent dominance from the most feared defensive player on the planet. The celebration on the sideline was pure chaos. Defensive teammates mobbed Garrett, screaming and jumping and pounding his shoulder pads. Coaches who had watched him develop over the years embraced him with genuine emotion. The moment was everything Garrett had worked his entire career to achieve. For a brief, perfect moment, everything felt right in Cleveland. Myles Garrett had cemented himself as the greatest pass rusher of his generation. A 7-time Pro Bowler, a former Defensive Player of the Year, a future first-ballot Hall of Famer, and now the single-season sack king. The record that everyone thought was untouchable belonged to him, but football is a cruel sport. It doesn't care about perfect moments. It doesn't pause to let you celebrate. The clock keeps ticking, and the game keeps moving whether you're ready or not. With under 2 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter, the Cincinnati Bengals mounted one final drive. Their offense, which had struggled against Cleveland's suffocating defense all game, suddenly found a rhythm. Burrow connected on several key passes. The chains kept moving. The sideline energy shifted. And then it happened. Cincinnati punched the ball into the end zone. The extra point sailed through the uprights. The scoreboard flipped. Bengals 18, Browns 17. The record-breaking celebration that had consumed the Cleveland sideline just moments earlier now felt hollow. Garrett had made history, but his team was about to lose. Again, the narrative was already writing itself in press boxes across the country. Another heartbreaking defeat for the Browns. Another wasted performance by their superstar. Another season ending with disappointment instead of triumph. The same old Cleveland story that fans had endured for decades. But somebody on that sideline wasn't ready to accept that ending. Somebody who had spent the entire season fighting to prove he belonged. Somebody who understood that this moment was about more than just a game, and he was about to change everything. Shedeur Sanders stood on the Cleveland sideline, watching the Bengals' celebration unfold. The rookie fifth-round pick out of Colorado. The quarterback that analysts had dismissed as a project player at best. The guy who wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this situation. 90 seconds remained on the game clock. The Browns trailed by 1 point. 40 yards separated them from field goal range. The season, Myles Garrett's record-breaking moment, and any hope of ending the year on a positive note all rested on what happened next. The weight of that situation would crush most rookie quarterbacks. The pressure would swallow them whole. The fear of failure would paralyze them into making safe, conservative decisions that ultimately lead to defeat. Sanders wasn't most rookie quarterbacks. He jogged onto the field with zero panic in his eyes. His body language radiated a calm confidence that seemed almost inappropriate given the circumstances. The moment didn't swallow him. He swallowed the moment. The Browns broke the huddle and lined up at their own 35-yard line. 89 seconds left. No timeouts remaining. The entire season compressed into one final drive. First play, Sanders took the snap, scanned the field, and fired toward the sideline. The pass sailed incomplete. Bengals fans roared. The Cleveland sideline tensed. Second play, Sanders dropped back, felt pressure coming from his blind side, and stepped up in the pocket. He delivered a quick strike over the middle to his tight end. 8 yards, first down. The chains moved. Third play, Cincinnati's defensive coordinator dialed up an all-out blitz. 6 rushers came screaming toward Sanders. The pocket collapsed almost instantly. Any other quarterback would have panicked. Any other quarterback would have forced a throw into coverage or taken a sack that ended the drive. Sanders sidestepped the first rusher, spun away from the second, and fired a dart to his receiver, breaking free over the middle. 12 more yards, first down. The clock kept bleeding, but the Browns kept moving. 54 seconds remained. The ball sat at the Cincinnati 45-yard line. Sanders was methodically picking apart a defense that had no answer for his poise under pressure. Fourth play, another completion. 7 yards to the sideline. The receiver stepped out of bounds to stop the clock. Fifth play, Sanders hit his running back on a checkdown that turned into a 15-yard gain after a missed tackle. 31 seconds left. The ball rested at the Cincinnati 31-yard line. Field goal range was within reach, but the Browns needed one more play to set up their kicker with a makeable attempt. Sanders took the snap and surveyed the defense. The Bengals were playing prevent coverage, dropping 7 defenders into the secondary. Every receiver was blanketed. The safe play was to throw the ball away and let the field goal unit take over. Sanders didn't make the safe play. He stepped up in the pocket, feeling phantom pressure that wasn't there. His eyes locked onto Jerry Jeudy running a comeback route near the sideline. The window was tight. The throw needed to be perfect. Sanders delivered a frozen rope that hit Jeudy in the chest. The receiver secured the catch and stepped out of bounds. 11 yards, first down. Browns ball at the Cincinnati 20-yard line. Sanders spiked the ball to stop the clock with 8 seconds remaining. The field goal unit sprinted onto the field. The stadium fell silent. Everything came down to one kick. The snap was clean, the hold was perfect. The kicker's leg swung through the ball with mechanical precision. The kick sailed through the uprights as time expired. Browns 20, Bengals 18. The Cleveland sideline exploded. Players rushed the field. Coaches embraced each other. The impossible had just happened. Myles Garrett got his record, and he got the win to go with it. Sanders stood at midfield, mobbed by teammates who had doubted him just weeks earlier. The rookie who was buried on the depth chart at the beginning of November had just delivered the most clutch drive of the entire NFL season against a division rival. With the season on the line, with history hanging in the balance, Garrett found Sanders in the chaos of the celebration. The veteran defensive end grabbed the rookie quarterback by the helmet, pulled their face masks together, and stared directly into his eyes. No words were exchanged. None were needed. The look between them said everything. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a fluke. This was the beginning of something that could change the entire trajectory of the Cleveland Browns franchise. But what happened in the following 24 hours would shake the foundation of everything they had built together. To truly understand why that moment on the field in Cincinnati mattered so much, you need to go back to mid-November. That's when everything changed for Shedeur Sanders. That's when the foundation of this unlikely partnership was first laid. The Browns entered their Week 11 matchup against the Baltimore Ravens with their season hanging by a thread. They were clinging to faint playoff hopes, desperate for any spark that could reignite their campaign. And then disaster struck. Starting quarterback Deshaun Watson, the man Cleveland had mortgaged their entire future to acquire, went down with yet another devastating injury. His Achilles tendon, the same one that had torn the previous season, gave out again during a routine dropback. Watson crumpled to the ground, clutching his leg, and the Browns' already fragile season shattered into pieces. The backup quarterback situation in Cleveland was a complete mess. The organization had put all their eggs in the Watson basket, leaving themselves dangerously thin at the most important position in football. When Watson went down, there was only one option remaining: Shedeur Sanders, the fifth-round rookie from Colorado who had spent the entire season learning from the sideline. The kid who never expected to see meaningful action in his first year. The quarterback that nobody outside of his own family believed was ready for this moment. Sanders was thrust into the fire with zero warning and even less preparation. His debut against the Baltimore Ravens was absolutely brutal. The Ravens' defense, one of the most aggressive units in football, smelled blood in the water. They blitzed relentlessly. They disguised coverages. They did everything possible to overwhelm the rookie who had never faced anything like this at the professional level. Sanders completed just 4 of his 16 passing attempts, 47 total yards, 1 interception that killed a potential scoring drive in the red zone. The Browns lost by double digits, and the criticism came fast and ruthless. Talking heads on every sports network lined up to bury him. Anonymous scouts questioned whether he had the arm strength to compete at this level. Social media ripped him apart with the kind of cruelty that only exists behind anonymous keyboards. The narrative was clear and seemingly unanimous. Shedeur Sanders wasn't ready. Maybe he never would be. But inside that locker room, something completely different was happening. After the game, with the sting of defeat still fresh, Sanders stood up in front of his teammates. The rookie walked to the center of the room and addressed every veteran, every coach, every member of the organization who was present. He took full responsibility for the loss. He apologized for his performance. He put the entire weight of that defeat on his own shoulders, refusing to make excuses or point fingers at anyone else. The rookie was trying to fall on the sword for a team that barely knew him. That's when Myles Garrett stepped forward. The veteran defensive end, the unquestioned leader of that locker room, walked directly up to Sanders. He stood face to face with the rookie and told him in front of everyone to keep his head up. He told Sanders that he wasn't going to carry this weight alone. He addressed the entire team and made it crystal clear that they win together and lose together, that nobody was going to hang this kid out to dry. The locker room fell silent. Every eye was on Garrett. And in that moment, something shifted. Sanders had been thrown into an impossible situation with no support system. He was drowning in doubt from every outside voice that claimed to know better. But the best player on his team, the guy everyone respected and feared, had just publicly declared his support. That moment planted a seed that would grow into something remarkable. The following week, Sanders made his first official start against the Las Vegas Raiders. The expectations were non-existent. Most analysts predicted another ugly performance, another embarrassing loss, another confirmation that Sanders was in over his head. Sanders had other plans. Early in the second quarter, with the Browns trailing by a touchdown, Sanders dropped back and surveyed the field. The Raiders' defense had committed to stopping the run, leaving single coverage on the outside receivers. Rookie wideout Isaiah Bond was streaking down the sideline with a step on his defender. Sanders loaded up and unleashed. The ball traveled 52 yards in the air, a perfect spiral that dropped into Bond's hands as he crossed into the end zone. Touchdown. The Browns' sideline erupted. But the most viral moment from that play wasn't the throw itself. It was Myles Garrett's reaction. The camera caught Garrett on the sideline, his helmet off, his eyes wide as dinner plates, his jaw literally hanging open. All he could do was shake his head and mutter one word. Wow. That clip spread across social media like wildfire. Garrett's genuine shock and amazement at what Sanders had just done became the talking point of the entire week. And when reporters caught up with Garrett after the game, he didn't hold back. He told them that there aren't many quarterbacks in the entire league who can make that throw. He said Sanders had something you can't teach: confidence, fearlessness, the ability to see the field and trust his arm when the play breaks down. Garrett declared publicly that Sanders was going to be something special if the organization gave him a chance to develop. From that point forward, Garrett became Sanders' biggest advocate. Every press conference, every interview, every sideline interaction. The superstar defensive end was putting his stamp of approval on the rookie quarterback for everyone to see. Week after week, the pattern continued. When Sanders struggled, Garrett defended him. When Sanders made mistakes, Garrett reminded reporters that growth takes time. When Sanders delivered impressive performances, Garrett hyped him up even more. The dynamic was unlike anything the Browns' locker room had seen in years. A future Hall of Fame defender publicly championing a fifth-round rookie quarterback. Two players from completely different worlds finding common ground in their shared desire to win. And Sanders wasn't just focused on his own development. He became obsessed with helping Garrett chase history. In a December press conference that drew national attention, Sanders laid out his philosophy in terms that left no room for interpretation. His job, he explained, was to score touchdowns, not field goals. Touchdowns. Why? Because when the offense puts up points, the defense gets more opportunities to make plays. When the Browns have a lead, opposing teams are forced to pass more frequently. More passing situations mean more chances for Garrett to pin his ears back and rush the passer. More chances to rush the passer mean more sacks. Sanders understood that his success directly fueled Garrett's pursuit of the record, and he embraced that responsibility completely. The results spoke for themselves. Against the Tennessee Titans in Week 14, Sanders absolutely erupted. He threw for 364 yards and 3 touchdowns, leading the Browns to a dominant victory. Garrett recorded another sack in that game, pushing his season total to 20 and putting the record squarely within reach. The two players were feeding off each other's success. Sanders gave Garrett opportunities. Garrett gave Sanders confidence and protection. They carried each other forward week after week, building towards something neither could have anticipated when the season began. And then came Cincinnati. The finale. The moment where everything aligned. Garrett broke the sack record with 4 minutes left. Sanders delivered the game-winning drive with 90 seconds remaining. The rookie made sure his teammates' historic moment wasn't tainted by another loss. It was poetic. It was perfect. And it solidified a bond between two players who had become brothers in the span of just 2 months. But the celebration was about to be cut brutally short, and the chaos that followed would test that bond in ways neither of them could have imagined. The confetti had barely been swept off the field in Cincinnati. The champagne bottles in the locker room were still half full. Players were still exchanging hugs and handshakes, basking in the glow of what they had just accomplished together. And then the Cleveland Browns organization detonated a bomb that nobody saw coming. Less than 24 hours after Myles Garrett shattered the single-season sack record and Shedeur Sanders delivered the most clutch drive of the entire NFL season, head coach Kevin Stefanski was fired. No warning. No grace period. No chance to savor the historic achievement that had just taken place. The news broke on social media first, as it always does. Reporters scrambled to confirm what initially seemed like a cruel hoax. Players found out through text messages and Twitter notifications. The head coach, who had dedicated 6 years of his life to the Cleveland Browns, was gone before most of the organization even knew it was coming. Kevin Stefanski was a two-time NFL Coach of the Year. He had guided Cleveland to 2 playoff appearances during his tenure. He had transformed a laughingstock franchise into a legitimate contender, at least for a few seasons. He had earned the respect and loyalty of nearly every player who had ever suited up for him. None of it mattered. The official reason given by ownership was cold, simple mathematics. The Browns had gone 8 wins and 26 losses over the past 2 seasons. That kind of record, regardless of circumstances, was deemed unacceptable by the people who signed the checks. But anyone who had been paying attention to this organization knew the real story ran much deeper than wins and losses. Every failure, every struggle, every impossible situation that Stefanski had been forced to navigate traced back to one catastrophic decision. A decision that Stefanski didn't even support. A decision that poisoned everything the Browns tried to build. The Deshaun Watson trade. In March of 2022, the Cleveland Browns made the kind of blockbuster move that was supposed to change a franchise forever. They identified the quarterback they believed would lead them to championships. They picked up the phone and called Houston, and they paid a price that would haunt them for years to come. 3 first-round draft picks. Gone. A 3rd-round pick. Gone. 2 4th-round picks. Gone. In exchange, Cleveland received Deshaun Watson. And then they handed him a contract that made history for all the wrong reasons. $230 million, fully guaranteed. Every single penny protected no matter what happened. At the time, ownership believed they were acquiring a top 5 quarterback in the prime of his career. A player who had been one of the most electric signal callers in football just a year earlier. A franchise cornerstone who would catapult Cleveland into championship contention for the next decade. Instead, they got the single worst trade in modern NFL history. Watson's tenure in Cleveland was a disaster from the moment he arrived. First came the suspension. 11 games missed in his first season due to off-field issues that had followed him from Houston. The Browns had known about the allegations before making the trade. They decided the talent was worth the risk. Then came the rust. Watson hadn't played a meaningful football game in nearly 2 years by the time he took the field for Cleveland. His timing was off. His decision-making was slow. He looked nothing like the player who had terrorized defenses in Houston, and then came the injuries. Watson struggled through his second season, showing occasional flashes but never coming close to justifying that massive contract. And then, in his 3rd year, his body finally gave out completely. The Achilles tear happened first, a devastating injury that would sideline any player for at least a year. Watson underwent surgery and began the long road to recovery. The Browns assured everyone that he would come back stronger than ever. He came back and tore the same Achilles again. 2 torn Achilles tendons in back-to-back seasons. The kind of injury that ends careers. The kind of setback that makes comeback nearly impossible. And it happened to a quarterback the Browns had wagered their entire future on. Watson played in just 19 total games across 3 seasons with Cleveland. His statistics were pedestrian at best. 19 touchdown passes, 12 interceptions, no playoff victories, no signature moments, nothing that even remotely justified what the organization had sacrificed to acquire him. The trade didn't just fail to deliver a championship quarterback. It actively destroyed the Browns' ability to compete. Those 3 first-round picks that Cleveland surrendered represented the foundation of any successful NFL roster. Young, cheap, controllable talent that could be developed into stars or traded for additional assets. The Browns had none of it. They were locked out of the first round for years, while other teams stockpiled future Pro Bowlers. The massive contract crippled their salary cap. That $230 million was dead money whether Watson played or not. Cleveland couldn't sign premium free agents. They couldn't retain their own developing players. They couldn't do any of the things that successful organizations do to build championship rosters. And all of it fell on Kevin Stefanski's shoulders. Here's where this story gets truly infuriating. Reports have surfaced that Stefanski never wanted Deshaun Watson in the first place. According to multiple sources inside the organization, the head coach was against the trade from the very beginning. He saw the risks. He understood the red flags. He knew that building a team around a quarterback with that much baggage was a recipe for disaster. But general manager Andrew Berry and ownership overruled him. Berry was the architect of the Watson trade. He was the one who convinced ownership that the risk was worth the reward. He was the one who structured that fully guaranteed contract that now handcuffs the organization. He was the one who surrendered all those draft picks for a player who has contributed almost nothing. And yet, when the axe finally fell, it was Stefanski who lost his job. Andrew Barry, the man who created this entire mess, not only survived the purge. He was handed the keys to lead the search for Stefanski's replacement. The architect of the worst trade in franchise history is now in charge of finding the next head coach and charting the path forward. The timing of Stefanski's firing tells you everything you need to know about how this organization operates. Hours after the final game of the season. Hours after Garrett broke the most prestigious record in defensive football. Hours after Sanders proved he could deliver when everything was on the line. Ownership couldn't wait a single day. They couldn't give Stefanski one final moment to celebrate with his players. They couldn't allow the locker room to savor what they had accomplished together. The plug was pulled before the celebration was even over. And the message it sent to every player in that locker room was crystal clear. Management doesn't care about your achievements. Management doesn't care about your loyalty. Management will throw anyone overboard the moment they become inconvenient. Myles Garrett heard that message louder than anyone. Myles Garrett saw this coming. While the rest of the football world was focused on his pursuit of the sack record, Garrett was paying close attention to everything happening around him. The organizational dysfunction, the coaching uncertainty, the whispers about changes that would come once the season ended. Days before the finale in Cincinnati, Garrett sat down with reporters for what everyone assumed would be a routine end-of-season press conference. Questions about the record. Questions about his legacy. Standard stuff that any superstar handles 100 times during their career. But then someone asked about the future. Someone asked whether Garrett wanted continuity with the coaching staff. Someone asked what his expectations were for the franchise moving forward. Garrett's answer sent shockwaves through the entire NFL. He said he's committed to winning, that as long as the organization shares that same commitment, he's all in, that he wants to be part of something special, something that competes for championships, something that makes all the work worthwhile. But then he added the part that changed everything. If the plan is anything other than winning, he said, count me out. If the organization is thinking about tanking, about tearing things down and starting over, about suffering through rebuilding years while hoping for better days ahead, he's not interested. That wasn't a casual comment tossed out during a routine press conference. That was a warning shot fired directly at ownership and management. That was Myles Garrett drawing a line in the sand and daring the Cleveland Browns to cross it. He referenced Max Crosby, the Las Vegas Raiders defensive end who has been extremely vocal about his own situation. Crosby has made it clear that he doesn't want to waste his prime years on a losing team. He wants to compete. He wants to win. And if his organization can't provide that, he wants out. The implication was obvious. Garrett was telling the world that he feels the exact same way, and he has every right to feel that way. Myles Garrett is 30 years old. He's in the absolute prime of his career. The sack record he just broke proves he's still the most dominant pass rusher on the planet. 7 Pro Bowl selections decorate his resume. Defensive Player of the Year honors sit on his mantle. First ballot Hall of Fame status is virtually guaranteed whenever he decides to hang up his cleats. This man has nothing left to prove individually. His legacy is secure regardless of what happens next. But the one thing missing from that legacy is team success. Playoff victories, deep runs in January, the chance to compete for a championship. Garrett has wasted too many years of his prime on losing teams. He's watched other elite defenders win Super Bowls while he's stuck at home watching from his couch. He's given everything he has to an organization that keeps finding new ways to fail him. And he's done accepting it. Less than a year ago, Garrett signed a 4-year contract extension worth $160 million. That deal came after he had demanded a trade, frustrated with the direction of the franchise. The Browns convinced him to stay. They promised things would be different. They sold him on a vision of competing for championships with a healthy Deshaun Watson leading the offense. Every single promise they made turned out to be a lie. Watson tore his Achilles twice. The offense was a disaster. The team won a combined 8 games over 2 seasons. And now the head coach is gone, while the general manager who created this mess remains in charge. Garrett is watching the same dysfunction unfold all over again. The Browns have put themselves in an absolutely impossible situation. Their best player, their franchise cornerstone, The face of the entire organization just told them publicly to figure it out or watch him leave. This isn't a negotiating tactic designed to extract more money. Garrett already has one of the richest contracts in the history of his position. This isn't posturing for a better situation or trying to gain leverage in some future discussion. This is a future Hall of Famer looking at his career and deciding that he refuses to waste what's left of his prime on a sinking ship. The Browns have zero leverage here. They cannot afford to trade Garrett. Doing so would gut their defense and send a message to every other player that management has given up. They cannot afford to lose him through conflict or frustration. He's the only thing keeping that franchise relevant, and they certainly cannot afford to ignore what he's telling them. Every single decision the Cleveland Browns make over the next few months will be measured against one simple question. Does this move help us win right now, or does it signal a rebuild? Because if it signals a rebuild, Myles Garrett is gone. He's made that abundantly clear. And if Garrett goes, everything the organization has tried to build collapses with him. The dominoes will fall one after another. Other talented players will demand trades. Free agents will avoid Cleveland like the plague. Draft picks will openly express their desire to play elsewhere. The franchise will spiral back into the darkness it spent years trying to escape. All because ownership and management couldn't get their act together. Garrett has done everything in his power to lift this organization. He's played through injuries. He's led by example on and off the field. He's defended his teammates when the outside world turned against them. He's been patient through losing seasons and front office mistakes and coaching changes and every other form of organizational dysfunction imaginable. His patience has run out. The ball is now in Cleveland's court, and the man who just broke the NFL's most prestigious defensive record is watching every move they make. Andrew Berry somehow survived the coaching purge that claimed Kevin Stefanski. The general manager who architected the disastrous Deshaun Watson trade, who surrendered all those draft picks for a quarterback who has barely played in 3 years, who structured that fully guaranteed contract that now haunts every financial decision the organization makes, kept his job. Not only did Berry survive, but ownership handed him the keys to lead the search for Stefanski's replacement. The man most responsible for Cleveland's current predicament is now in charge of finding the solution. And the biggest question he faces is the one that will determine everything else. Who is the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns in 2026? In his press conference following Stefanski's dismissal, Berry addressed this question head-on. Reporters wanted clarity. Fans wanted answers. The entire football world wanted to know what direction this franchise was heading. Berry's response was telling in its evasiveness. He said the organization would do their work on the quarterback market. They would evaluate every option available to them. They would leave no stone unturned in their search for the right answer. But when pressed for specifics, Berry admitted he couldn't confirm whether the starter for next season would come from inside the building or from an external source. Translation: nobody is safe. Everyone is on the table. And the organization has absolutely no idea what they're doing at the most important position in football. Not Shedeur Sanders, the rookie who just delivered the most clutch drive of the entire season. Not Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the backup who has shown flashes of competence in limited action. And certainly not the ghost of Deshaun Watson, who is somehow still expected to be on the roster next season despite not taking a single meaningful snap in over a year. The Watson situation is a financial nightmare with no clean solution. Watson missed the entire 2025 campaign while rehabbing his twice-torn Achilles. He hasn't looked like a capable NFL quarterback since his days in Houston, which feels like a lifetime ago. His body has betrayed him. His timing is shot. His confidence is shattered. And yet the Browns are stuck with him. Watson is owed $46 million next season. That money is fully guaranteed. He's going to collect every penny of it whether he ever plays another down of professional football or not. If the Browns decide to cut Watson, they eat $131 million in dead cap space. That number is so catastrophic that it would cripple the franchise for years. They wouldn't have the financial flexibility to sign free agents, retain their own players, or compete in any meaningful way. Trading Watson is essentially impossible. No team in the NFL wants to take on that contract, especially for a player who has proven nothing in 3 years except that he can't stay healthy. Every general manager in the league would laugh Cleveland off the phone if they proposed a Watson trade. So Watson stays. He collects his checks. He takes up a roster spot that could go to someone who might actually contribute. He devours cap space that could be allocated to positions of actual need. And the Browns have to figure out how to win despite the albatross hanging around their neck. This is where Shedeur Sanders enters the equation. Sanders started 7 games during his rookie season. His record in those starts was 3 wins and 4 losses. The raw statistics don't exactly jump off the page. 1,400 passing yards, 7 touchdown passes, 10 interceptions. If you look at those numbers in isolation, you might conclude that Sanders isn't ready to be a franchise quarterback. You might argue that the Browns need to explore other options. You might point to the interception total as evidence that he's too turnover-prone to be trusted with the keys to the offense. But context matters more than raw numbers. And the context surrounding Sanders' rookie season tells a completely different story. Sanders was a 5th-round draft pick who never expected to see the field during his first year. He was selected as a developmental prospect, someone who would learn behind the starter and hopefully grow into a capable backup. Nobody planned for him to be thrown into meaningful action. Then Watson's Achilles exploded, and suddenly Sanders was the guy. He had almost no preparation time. The playbook wasn't tailored to his strengths. The offensive line couldn't protect him consistently. The receiving corps was dealing with injuries and inconsistency. Every possible factor worked against him. And still, he showed something. The poise in the pocket when pressure came. The ability to extend plays and create opportunities that weren't there in the original design. The clutch throws when the game hung in the balance. The leadership that earned respect from veterans who had been in the league for a decade. Most importantly, Sanders showed the intangibles that you simply cannot teach. Confidence that borders on arrogance but never quite crosses the line. Fearlessness in the face of overwhelming odds. The willingness to take accountability for failures while crediting teammates for successes. The kind of competitive fire that makes people want to follow you into battle. Myles Garrett saw it from the very first game. Every week throughout the season, the defensive end went out of his way to praise Sanders publicly. When the rookie struggled against blitzes, Garrett reminded reporters that growth takes time. When Sanders threw interceptions, Garrett defended his decision-making and pointed to the lack of surrounding talent. When Sanders made big plays, Garrett hyped him to anyone who would listen. That endorsement from the team's best player carries more weight than any statistic or scouting report. Now the Browns face a choice that will define the future of their franchise. The first option is to draft a quarterback with one of their 2 first-round picks in the upcoming draft. The 2026 class is loaded with talent at the position. Several prospects could be available when Cleveland makes their selections, but drafting a rookie quarterback signals a rebuild. It means accepting that the next starter will need years to develop. It means enduring growing pains and learning curves and inevitable mistakes. It means more losing seasons while the new guy figures out how to play at this level. That's exactly what Myles Garrett said he won't accept. The second option is to roll with Deshaun Watson and hope he somehow returns to form after 2 torn Achilles and 3 years of utter dysfunction. The odds of that working are somewhere between slim and absolutely none. Watson hasn't shown anything resembling competent quarterback play since before he arrived in Cleveland. His body is broken. His confidence is shattered. And even if he manages to get healthy, there's no guarantee the player who terrorized defenses in Houston still exists. Going back to Watson would be a desperation move that would likely end in the same disaster the organization has already experienced. The third option is to commit fully to Shedeur Sanders. Sanders is already on the roster. He already knows the playbook. He's already shown flashes of the brilliance that made him a successful college quarterback. He's already earned the respect and trust of the locker room, including from the team's most important player. And best of all, he costs almost nothing. Sanders' rookie contract pays him $4.6 million spread over 4 years. Compare that to Watson's $46 million anchor. The financial math alone makes Sanders the obvious choice for any organization trying to build a competitive roster. But beyond the money, choosing Sanders sends a message. It tells Myles Garrett that the organization is trying to win now. It signals to the locker room that management believes in building around what they already have. It demonstrates confidence in a young player who has shown the ability to perform when everything is on the line. Garrett's influence in this decision cannot be understated. The face of the franchise just broke the single-season sack record. He just delivered an ultimatum about not wanting to be part of a rebuild. His voice carries more weight in that organization than any scout, analyst, or media personality. And Garrett has been saying the same thing all season long. He believes in Shedeur Sanders. He thinks the rookie has what it takes to become a franchise quarterback. He's publicly advocated for Sanders at every possible opportunity. If Garrett tells the front office that he wants to win with Sanders, the Browns are going to have to listen. They don't have the luxury of ignoring their best player, especially not after everything that's happened over the past few years. The quarterback crossroads facing Cleveland isn't just about finding someone to throw the football. It's about sending a message about what kind of organization they want to be. It's about choosing between past mistakes and future possibilities. It's about deciding whether to build or blow things up. And every option leads back to the same question that Myles Garrett posed in his ultimatum. Are the Cleveland Browns committed to winning? Everything comes down to the next few weeks. The Cleveland Browns stand at a fork in the road that will define the next decade of football in that city. Every decision they make between now and the start of the 2026 season will ripple through the organization for years to come. The coaching search will reveal their true priorities. Will they hire an offensive-minded innovator who can develop Shedeur Sanders into a franchise quarterback? Or will they bring in someone who wants to install their own system with their own hand-picked signal caller? The quarterback evaluation will determine whether Sanders gets his chance. Will the front office recognize what they have in the young man who delivered that clutch drive in Cincinnati? Or will they panic and chase external solutions that signal a rebuild? The Deshaun Watson decision looms over everything. Will they finally admit the trade was a catastrophic mistake and eat the dead cap to move on? Or will they continue throwing good money after bad, hoping a miracle recovery materializes? The draft strategy will send the clearest message of all. Will they use those 2 precious first-round picks to surround Sanders with talent and give Garrett a reason to stay? Or will they select a rookie quarterback and confirm every fear that's been building in that locker room? Myles Garrett will be watching every move. The man who just etched his name above every pass rusher in NFL history has made his position abundantly clear. He's committed to winning. He's not interested in rebuilding. And if the organization shows any signs of tearing things down, he's gone. That's not an idle threat. That's not negotiating posture. That's a future Hall of Famer looking at what's left of his prime and deciding that he deserves better than what Cleveland has given him. But here's the thing that ownership and management need to understand. The foundation for something special already exists in that locker room. Garrett and Sanders proved during the final months of the season that they can carry a team when it matters most. The chemistry between them is real. The mutual respect is genuine. The willingness to fight for each other has been demonstrated repeatedly. Sanders showed he can deliver in the clutch. When the game was on the line, when the pressure was at its peak, when everything seemed hopeless, he rose to the moment and proved he belongs. Garrett showed he's still the most dominant defensive player in professional football. The sack record wasn't a product of luck or favorable circumstances. It was the result of sustained excellence from a player who refuses to accept anything less than greatness. All they need is an organization willing to believe in them. If the Browns make the smart moves, the path forward becomes clear. Hand Sanders the keys to the offense. Surround him with weapons through the draft and free agency. Hire a head coach who shares the vision of winning now. Give Garrett the support system he needs to chase the one thing missing from his legacy: a championship. But if the Browns fumble this opportunity, the consequences will be catastrophic. Garrett demands a trade. Other talented players follow him out the door. Free agents refuse to sign with a dysfunctional organization. Draft picks openly express their desire to be selected by anyone else. The rebuild becomes a complete teardown, and Cleveland falls back into the darkness they've spent years trying to escape. The same darkness that has consumed this franchise for decades. 2 players are standing together in the face of organizational dysfunction: a rookie who refuses to break under pressure, a superstar who refuses to accept losing as his fate. Myles Garrett drew his line in the sand. Shedeur Sanders proved beyond any doubt that he belongs at this level. The only question left is whether the Cleveland Browns have the courage, the wisdom, and the commitment to stand with both of them. The most critical offseason in franchise history begins right now. Every eye in the football world is watching. Every decision will be analyzed and scrutinized and second-guessed. But none of that matters to the 2 men who carried Cleveland through that final game in Cincinnati. They already know what they're capable of achieving together. They've already demonstrated the kind of bond that championship teams are built around. Now they're waiting to see if the organization they've given everything to is worthy of their loyalty. The answer will determine everything.